Okay.
All right, Professor, how are you? Good to see you again after 3 weeks.
Okay. I've been puzzling over the last few weeks over a particular statistic, which is that Tunisia, which has been the most successful, I think, of the countries that went through the process that we call the Arab Spring,
Hmm.
because it's now a relatively democratic society, has the highest number, both the highest number in absolute terms and the highest number in terms of proportion of population of volunteers to go and fight with ISIS.
I didn't know that.
Now, how can one explain that? And as I was thinking about it, I thought of something else. When I was much younger, maybe in the middle of the last century, I was puzzling over the fact that over the past 100 years, then between the mid 19th and mid 20th centuries, there had always been a plentiful supply of young English boys, young men, between the ages of, say, 16 and 25, eager to go off and fight for the empire. And of course, many of them didn't come back.
That's right.
Why did they want to do that? And then I thought, well, we are the product of biological evolution. And evolution is a struggle.
Hmm.
You either win and beat the others, or you don't, and you give way to other species.
Oh my, I think I know where you're going.
Now, we think we've outgrown all that. And since, well, for a long time, really, we've had other ideas. Biological evolution, we now manage our own evolution because we make sure everybody has equal rights, or we try to including equal rights to reproduce, and we try to get rid of violence and crime and so on. But obviously there are some things we're not doing very well at. So what came to my mind was the idea that maybe a lot of young men are programmed genetically, well, young men in general are programmed genetically after puberty to fight. And that's why we now are the most powerful species in the world. And now they're looking around for something to fight. And ISIS is offering them an opportunity, so off they go. So it's the ones that are in the most peaceful countries that are going, because they've got nothing to fight at home. So what do you think?
Well, first of all, I know that you're a father of a son who hopefully never
He
see.
joined the Marines.
Did he?
Yes.
Well, hopefully he never sees this video. But you've answered the question. All right. I would think it's a well-known fact that a 19 or a 20-year-old or a 21-year-old male is attracted to physical violence,
Oh.
physical interaction. I mean, that's the secret
The
sauce.
cinema certainly knows that.
Cinema knows it. The National Football League knows it. The Worldwide Wrestling Federation knows it. I mean, the list is endless. And you're right. I mean, you're 100% exactly right. And I think much in the same way as the American Marines do their recruiting ads on television programs at night. I'm sure you've seen them. I'm sure that ISIS has similar slick presentations that they show on the internet that can even do them one better, do the Marines one better, by couching the whole thing in paradise and salvation and serving God instead of just serving something as trivial as your country. So I'm thinking, of course, yes, I would wholeheartedly agree with you. But I guess what I'm wondering is why pick on Tunisia? I mean, why not look at all of the other countries? Because
Well, I'm looking at the statistic on the screen here, and Tunisia has the highest count. The next highest count is Saudi Arabia. The next is Russia. Then Morocco, Jordan, France, Lebanon, Germany, Turkey, and the UK at the bottom.
well, I think your analysis is correct. But what I would wonder though is if you look at countries that would not normally be ISIS recruiting grounds, right? Like Peru or Guatemala or Canada or something like that, and looked at the activities of males who might be 19 to 25 years old, and then better yet looked at ad campaigns, advertisement campaigns aimed at them, I think you'd see the same thing. All right, I think that it would be the whole idea of get involved in something by like wearing the right pair of dungarees or blue jeans that make you more active and allow you to have this kind of
gang warfare.
Well, that was the other place, of course, that you need to go to, because the gangs do the same thing, and it probably is a historical strain throughout all of history. And I mean, the generals have known it since the very beginning. I mean, I think anybody who fights wars on an organized fashion from the beginning of time recognized it. That the people who are going to fight aren't going to be guys who are 61 years old, all right? They're going to be guys who are like 20 that you can influence, that you can give that kind of speech that Henry gave at Agincourt. And they'll go, yes, that's it. I'm going to run out and impale myself on a pike, because I just heard that, or I'm going to blow myself up on a bus. So yeah, it's right. It's true. I mean, you're at that time of life where you'll do anything.
It is quite amazing what young people are ready to do. But the reason that I think this is interesting from the point of view of globalization is that it brings to our attention the major problem of globalization, which is managing human social life in a way that is totally different from the way life has been historically up until now, because it's always been competition between various groups, and of course in the 19th and 20th centuries it's been between groups who think of themselves as nations, which is a totally artificial idea anyway. And before that it was religions, and in some parts of the world it's still religions, but some sort of identity anyway. And we've got to find a way to change that. But we're so good at technology and science and finding things out and understanding the universe and quantum mechanics and all this sort of thing. But what we're hopeless at is managing our own social lives.
Well, what would be interesting if you looked at the whole spectrum of society at any given time, and looked at all of the violence and the violence. Let's just say the violence. And you could somehow reduce to a stratification concept I'm thinking of in my mind, and just say, all right, if you subtracted the male population of this society between the ages of 17 and 25, just subtracted it out, what would the violence level be then? And I guarantee you, it'd drop to the floor, right? It would just drop to the floor. And then on the other hand, if you add it back in, you'd see it explode again. All right, and there's been hints of that in the case of like African American males. It's sort of like a dog whistle kind of thing that's been used in the American presidential campaign of late. Young black men, so-called quote prone to violence, only because they're in the penitentiary systems, but they're not the only ones prone to violence. Any male between the ages of 17 and 25 is prone to violence. It's just a question of what the social structure is that's keeping them in place. I would be willing to say that you could find a Mennonite male between the ages of 17 and 25 who also doesn't mind roughhousing with his brothers and cousins and just, doing whatever people do. But there's a social constraint, a social umbrella kind of over them that does not permit the kind of violence that rises to the attention of the rest of society where it causes them problems. So, you might be onto something, but I don't know what could be done about it, unless somehow globalization could so dampen that down somehow, or dilute it. I don't know.
Well, I think that understanding always helps. Seeing things in a larger perspective always helps. For people who have to make decisions and then get their decisions accepted. And one of my favorite things to say in meetings talking about this sort of thing is that the faster things change, the further you need to look back in time in order to understand how we got to where we are today. And people look at me and say, how could you explain that? And I think that the explanation is that if things are changing fairly slowly, then the explanation is fairly easy. But the faster things change, the more difficult the explanation becomes. And so you've got to look at factors which have a much longer history that push the change. And I think that we've been so mixed up over the last century or so about the relationship between culture and biology. Anthropologists discovered the idea of culture as an analytical concept. And then they spent the first half of the 20th century trying to prove that it had nothing to do with biology, even though, of course, if you are not biologically fit, you're not going to be much use to culture. Right. And so it's only since the mid-70s that they've accepted that idea, but they really haven't come to terms with it. And I think what we have to do now, and it is beginning to happen in anthropology, is that we've got to understand what's going on in the relationship between the biological programming and the social processes and what we agree to culturally to manage the social processes in terms of the biological programming.
I see. Well, I don't think there could be any doubt that the biological programming of young adult males is what it is. So then what we would need to do is look at the social and cultural response to that. And I suppose in the old days, if you will, I mean, the ideas that the Greeks had were athletic contests, games, Olympics, etc., in order for people to let off steam, so to speak. And then obviously it was discovered that warfare was a particularly good way to do this, because it could also advance your interests. But that horse is long run out of the barn, so to speak. And there are a lot of people who are taking advantage of that biological programming. You're right.
Okay.
Well, on that note, that's going to give me a lot to think about for the week. That's for sure. I'm gonna be like looking around at young men who are 20 years old.
Watch out.
Watch out. All right, Professor Stewart, thank you very much. All right, bye-bye. Bye. Well, that was very interesting.
Well, I think I've got to work out what to do with the idea, and I want to get together a couple of my colleagues, one who deals with genetic history and one who deals with Paleolithic, and see what we can put together.
Well, I'd like to be a fly on the wall during that discussion. So. All right, let me wrap this up, because I apologize. I was late coming in, and I was late trying to get the recording to work, but it seems to have worked just fine.
Good. Okay. So well, I have to go off and do something now as well.
All right. Well,
enjoy your trip.
I will, and we'll aim for next week.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian. Take
Cheers.
care. Bye-bye.